This is another form of a story map. As I go through some information, Esri is, because it's technology, and those of you who are working in technology knows that technology keeps changing. So the number one thing, and I was going to put it on here and then kind of forgot, just be flexible because, because things are constantly changing. Now, again, that shouldn't be a deterrent because I'm going to teach them this way, now it's going to change. Not only will you become flexible with it, but your students definitely will be as they work through any changes that kind of happen. So currently right now, there's two different sets of story map formats. This is the new one that's out there. And it's the one that, that will help you in either format. But this is maybe the one that's easier to get started in if you've never done a story map before. Notice that it has a place for, the title. And like, for example, where my name is, your students, rather than putting their names, will put their generic name. I think they can, I'm trying to think now if they can do that because their names kind of automatically pop up, but we'll figure that out. And so first of all, we're calling this Hometown Illinois. And so make your story local. First of all, I think it's more enriching for students to study something local. And I know a lot of the questions we had on the survey, or a lot of the responses, had to do with how can I connect this to my curriculum? And again, because that's so individualistic between the high schools and the middle schools, and then depending on what specific subject you're teaching and going to use for this, it's just too broad to try to bring that all together here. But I think that a lot of the topics, so if you're studying, US history, study the history of your town and, bring it down to a different scale. So in geography, we talk a lot about scale and, looking at local, national, and international types of scale with information. And there's something interesting about every town, whether it's large or small. And, so that, for example, I live in Grayslake, Illinois, and it used to be home to the gelatin company. And the smokestack and the business were there for years and years. And it stopped producing gelatin. And so now the smokestack has actually become some iconic symbol, and they've incorporated it now into a community park. But there's a whole history there about why Grayslake had a gelatin factory, and a quite successful one, sort of in farm country. So, look at something local. If you're studying things about politics, if you're in AP Human Geography and you happen to be in the political geography unit, maybe it has something to do with voting. What's happening, what happened with voting, and we just had the recent presidential election, and how has that been the same or different from previous years? And that kind of information, statistical information, might be online. If you're more of a science bent, especially with environmental science, maybe it has something to do with looking at water quality, or just even going out to a forest preserve in your area and documenting different species that happen to be there. So, think about how whatever you're doing, that the scale that you use, you want to make the scale local, but it might fit into a broader topic of whatever it is that you're teaching, to help students get a better understanding of it by looking at it locally. It also allows students to, again, get those primary resources. They can go out and get their own photographs, which is highly encouraged over using anything on the internet, especially for photographs. They can interview people, and of course they can do that through Zoom. And you can do surveys. Surveys are, you can go out and collect information. And again, there's some different tools that you can set up. And if your students have iPads or iPhones or Android versions, they can do that on their own, especially if you're remote, teaching remotely. And so they can collect the data in the field and it's someplace nearby. So again, try to make your story local. Jenny and I can help you try to connect your curriculum specifically to something. It might be, also you might be representing a club, or you might be in scouting or 4-H. We'd be more than happy to help you connect it to whatever kinds of projects you might be working on. Secondly, You want to think about this geo-inquiry process. A lot of times people think that the social sciences and geography in particular, don't have any kind of format. It's not like science where you have a hypothesis and you plan an experiment and you watch and observe for your results and then you draw conclusions from that. So does geography. We call it geo-inquiry. And if you use any of the prepared geo-inquiries that are online, they actually have some different kinds of aspects to them. So some of them will say, have different divisions where you ask a question, you acquire your information, you do some exploration of that information. And in this case, maybe by mapping or having it show on a map and then kind of exploring what you see there through observation. You analyze that information. And again, it might be by filtering out something, like an activity I've done recently with some older students was looking at, especially since everyone was remote and you couldn't go to restaurants and things. Well, okay, so what kinds of restaurants do you have in your town and which ones have indoor dining, which ones have carry out, which ones have Wi-Fi so you can, connect into that. And those are all little questions. They get plotted on the map and then I could filter out and say, just show me the restaurants that have Wi-Fi. And so that's a type of analysis that you can do. Or you can analyze things through using different colors to analyze or compare things. And then the final step would be to act. And that actions it could be that you're actually going to do something. You're going to, maybe go to a community council member or an alderman if you live in Chicago and ask them to make some changes. Or it might be something that you're just drawing some conclusions saying, here's how we can, summarize this in the end and make some changes. Now, if you look at some of the geo inquiries that are more science oriented, sometimes they use 5 steps that are still part of that inquiry format to engage students. So again, it might be the hook that grabs them to get them excited, or again, a question. You start to explore the information. And so that might also be going out and collecting the data, whether it's in person or sometimes, again, it's looking to find layers that are, if there's statistical information. For example, if you're studying something about population, the Census Bureau has a lot of layers that you can import into your map. And so you're exploring to find out where are you going to get your information from. And then once you have that information, you start to do those explanations. What are those observations? What am I seeing here? Why am I seeing that information? You're going to elaborate on it. And again, that's maybe going more for the significance and the why, and then evaluate. So again, thinking about, what's important about this information? What's most useful for it, about it? Is it, if I'm studying water quality samples, is the water really bad enough that we have to have some kind of mitigation? Or do we have some endangered species in our park that we need to make sure are protected more? So both of these are inquiry processes, very similar to a scientific inquiry. We just use different words for it. So once you start getting students to think about what they're going to inquire about, what they want to know more information about, they're going to collect that information, do something, and get it on a map. So you're going to be working with ArcGIS ArcGIS Online to map your information. But then you're going to want them to tell that story. Why is it important? A definition, there's several definitions, quick definitions of geography. One is who and what, or where and why, and so what. So that's the story. You're plotting on a map, who and what, or where and why. And then the big so what, what's the significance of this information? So I've actually added a couple more, Jenny, from those that are, I think these encompass everything that's we have under our tab. But so you might do an awareness story, just showing what's around. I live in Grayslake and we had a gelatin factory, but what else is here? Is there anything else that shows evidence of that this is an older city? When was it incorporated? And why was it incorporated? And so I might go around and take pictures of buildings and find out the dates that those buildings were built and what the original use was and what's the current use of it. And then as I plot that on a map, I'm going to start maybe noticing patterns and relationships. In the case of Grayslake, we have a major actually several major train lines going through. We have both commuter lines that go into and out of Chicago, and we also have for transport of goods and commodities. So Grayslake was a stop initially for transporting goods and commodities from the farms and the gelatin factory to other places. And so, so what we notice is most of the businesses that we see are going to be along the train tracks. But you notice that pattern when you actually have it plotted on a map. And if you're plotting like residential areas versus businesses, you get to see where the businesses are in relation to where different communities are building homes and get the residential districts, and how have those changed over time. So just awareness, just plotting something on a map and looking at what is that and what is it telling you about, what kind of information is it telling you. You also might want to look at a problem and look to see if there's any solutions. So there was a group in Chicago. This was an after-school club of 4th and 5th graders. And they said there's a big problem in our neighborhood because the sidewalks are all cracked and they're uneven. And we try to ride our bikes on them. It's dangerous. And so they went out, again, with survey equipment, just and took pictures, answered some questions about these cracks, plotted it automatically, plotted on a map for them. They, observed what was going on, and they actually took it to their alderman and said, these are places that are very dangerous to ride our bicycles, and they're also bad for people who might have wheelchairs or walking, elderly walking with canes. So their solution was to go to an alderman, and the alderman did have those sidewalks fixed. So you have a problem and you're looking for that solution. How can you solve that problem? You also might have an issue, and issues generally have various points of view or various perspectives. So an issue might be, for example, I just heard that Arlington Park is which is a racetrack in the Chicago area, is going to be sold. So the issue is, who are you going to sell it to? And you're going to have lots of different points of view. The surrounding community may say, hey, we need a major mall here, a shopping mall. Business people may say, hey, we would like a small industrial park here. Someone else might come in. So you can look at, what it is and what are all these different perspectives. And again, behind all of that, you have it plotted on a map and you're looking at some distributions and spatial, what's going on spatially. You can look at historical data and then bring it back, how is that relevant to the current? How did things develop from that historical background into today? You can do a comparison. So maybe I want to compare the village of Grayslake to where Jenny lives, Springfield, Illinois. And we can, how are they alike? How are they different? And again, notice that behind that is a mapping component. You're going to have the map, and you're going to, maybe you're going to plot businesses and schools, and maybe I was thinking churches perhaps, and and just look at, are things similar or are they different? And then finally, you can also do a project that really is just strictly an evaluation. So it might be a problem that's been solved, but now you want to say, is this the right solution? We want to do this. So if you do anything with evaluation, the students need to establish what criteria they're basing the evaluation on. So there's lots of different kinds of stories that you can tell with the information that you have, so that it's helpful for students to also think about what is the type of story that we want to tell, because then that helps them lay out what their story map is going to look like. So I wanted to create awareness, and so you can see I just have various chapters to my stories, and Jenny did the same thing with the little tabs across the top. It was an awareness of here's our contest, and so that helps to to show what you can do. By the way, in story maps, whether no matter which style you use, not only can you draw in images. I don't have any maps in mine, but you can you can add maps. Your ArcGIS maps get added in automatically. You can add video. You can have students speak. They don't have to even show their face. You can just have video recordings, voice recordings, as well as the text and images. So lots of ways for them to share what they're studying and what they've found out. So Jenny, what else would you like to add to that?
Well, I thought it was very interesting that for the survey that you sent out to the teachers, that you actually used Survey 123, which is an online survey that your students would have access to too, and you can do many different things with that.
And was not, again, I know people always say, yeah, but you guys do it all the time, so it's easy for you. Well, remember what I said about being flexible. Things change. So it's not necessarily all of a sudden we go in and things are a little bit different.
Mhm.
But it's not, I'm not a really, Jenny's a technology person. And so her skills in technology, sometimes, sometimes the technology part doesn't seem as difficult or daunting to her. I'm more of a curriculum person. So the technology has been daunting to me. And again, the whole process that we're doing here is Esri keeps trying to refine it and make it so it's accessible to teachers, something they can learn easily and use in their classroom with their students and have their students learn to use. So the learning curve is not meant to be daunting. So again, part of it is just getting over that first thought about this is going to be hard, because I think you're going to find it's a whole lot easier.
Yes, and the students, people that work with the students on this find that they just take off, that this kind of all seems like intuitive almost to the students.
Mhm. So I think, this session today was just to make you aware of the contest and where you could find the information about it. Know that we're here to help you with anything that you need some help with. And we intend to have another brief session in about a week I forgot now what we were going to share.
Well, was it the story maps?
I don't know, or connecting to your curriculum, I think it was.
Okay.
Some ways that we, can help you connect to your curriculum. So we intend to keep in touch with you and maybe have these, these little sessions, either group sessions or individual sessions to help you get started with your students.